Welcome to the United Christian Marriage Podcast, where we help you build a healthy, united marriage that impacts everyone around you now and for generations to come. Today, we're talking about something so many of us struggle with, and that is getting the support we actually need from our spouse without resentment, without bitterness, or without feeling completely unseen and unheard. I just want you to imagine with me. You're juggling all the things, right? You've got the house, the kids, work, church responsibilities, maybe there's sports and extracurriculars, and maybe you have a side job, or you work full time, or you work from home. And so there's all these things that you're juggling, and sometimes it feels like you're just drowning in all the things, right? And sometimes we look at our spouse and it seems like they're just oblivious to this weight that we are carrying. And we just hope that they'll notice, that they'll just get it. But they don't. And we feel like they should just get it, right? Like sometimes we can get in our mind and feel like that should be the standard. And every day that passes by that we feel like they don't just get it, you may start to feel more frustrated, more exhausted, more alone, and you may even begin to wonder, like, is this the person for me? Because they don't even seem to notice what I'm going through. But what if I told you that your spouse isn't trying to ignore your needs, they just don't know what they are? What if instead of waiting for them to read your mind, you could learn how to communicate in a way that actually invites their support and strengthens your marriage? That's exactly what we're talking about today, and we're going to touch on some unmet expectations. Because when we get this right, our marriages will shift from silent tension to true partnership, and that, my friends, changes everything. So let's dive in. Hey wives, I see you. I know the pressure you're carrying, the pressure to be the perfect wife, the devoted mother, the woman who keeps it all together. You're told to be soft, feminine, and gentle, yet also strong, capable, and a provider. The world pulls you in 100 directions, stretching you thin, leaving you exhausted, and wondering if you're enough. But I need you to hear this. God has more for you. More for your marriage, more for your motherhood, more for the legacy you are building. You are not meant to do this on your own strength, so press in, do the work, and trust that something greater is coming. Okay, so I am guilty of this, okay? I was this wife, the wife who just wanted my husband to read my mind, and I thought I was communicating. Like, I thought that it was clear. I thought that if I said it one time, he should remember it for eternity. And I thought that, things were just obvious, right? Like, to me, I was like, well, that's just common sense. Like, you should just know that I want that done. And the longer you're married, I think you just realize more and more that that doesn't work. But realizing that and knowing how to go about handling that are two separate things, right? Like, you can realize that it's not working and still have no idea what to do about it. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And I just want you to know that I've done this, okay? Even now, like, I still struggle to clearly communicate on certain days. Like, if we have a really busy week, right? I mean, it's like tenfold better than what it used to be. But if there's not time to talk, we will still have days come up where, like, there's just unmet expectations, or like things didn't get communicated. Like, I'm just gonna throw myself under the bus here. We did not plan Easter ahead of time like we should have. Okay, so Easter was yesterday, if you're listening to this in real time, and we should have planned it at least a week out, right? Like, we usually plan on the weekend for the upcoming week, and that helps us stay, like, on routine, on track, and all that. Well, we got behind on that, and we did not plan Easter. We, like, have talked multiple times about what we do or don't do with holidays, and we tend to, like, not do the secular stuff like bunnies, eggs, Santa Claus, that sort of thing. Personally, we just don't do it. We we tend to just make things more about Jesus and try to make our own like fun out of that. That's like points to Jesus, if that makes sense. So, there was just something like we didn't fully talk through it. And then I had all these expectations in my head, and I kept like not making the time or the space with my husband to like communicate what I wanted to happen. And then we got like a couple days before, and we're trying to like communicate with family and get all this like, all the details sorted out. And then I'm like, things are shooting out of my mouth, probably with a little bit of attitude, because I was like frustrated that my husband didn't just assume or just know. And it wasn't a big deal, right? Like once I told him, he was like, oh yeah, I don't know why I didn't think about that, or like, like he was understanding about it. But I know that I did not show up the way that I want to as a wife, like in that moment, right? And so part of why we're talking about this episode is because those things can come up, and those things used to be a lot worse and a lot more common in our marriage earlier on, especially. And so I think we all need this reminder and the perspective, like, how do we go back to seeing communication as an act of love and not an act of control, right? Okay, so let's just dive into a Bible scripture real fast. James 1:19 says, "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger." Woo! Goodness, guys. This verse has been one of the most convicting over like my entire lifetime. And I say entire lifetime because anger has something that has been like repeatedly ingrained in me from a young age. Like anger was a big problem in my family. My dad was abusive, and he was like an angry drunk, or, if he was using drugs, like he would be very angry. And so that was like the first 5 years of my life. And then when I was in foster care, I guess I didn't really see a ton of anger that I remember. I did have one foster mom who was like maybe on the angrier side, but it wasn't like a huge memory for me. And then when we were adopted, my adoptive mom also like struggled with anger and like outbursts and yelling. And so all that like was what I witnessed. And then I'm not really sure at what point I like started being angry. It could have happened earlier than I remember, but I remember it being worst like when I was going through like my peak like puberty years, I guess you call it, like over my like teenage years of like growing, turning into a woman, and like all those hormonal shifts and just everything that I went through, also just traumatically and emotionally, it like intensified my anger. And so this is a verse that I have like continually tried to go back to and remind myself of. And I think it's so good here because even if you don't struggle with anger, right? Just the quick to listen and slow to speak part could transform your marriage. And obviously don't be slow to speak in the sense that you don't communicate your needs or what you're hoping to get out of something. Like, that's not what it's saying here. I think what it's saying is that we shouldn't be dominating the conversation or just always like trying to give our input or cutting people off or thinking that our opinion matters more than someone else's, especially since we're supposed to be letting our husbands lead, right? Okay, so I encourage you to sit with that verse, pray over it, allow the Lord to speak to you through that verse today, and ask him where that verse applies to you in your marriage. And then I just want to, throw this in there for you, those of you who might be ready. In our marriage coaching program, this is something that I know a lot of couples struggle with, is like feeling unheard. Maybe they struggle with anger. Maybe they struggle with trying like communicate in a way that's like effective without cutting each other off or, getting angry, snapping, saying things that are hurtful. And most spouses actually want to support each other. Like deep down, they want to be each other's support system. They want to be unified. They want to be connected. They want to walk together, but they just don't know how. And I just want to encourage you, if you're ready to learn how, that's what we do inside our coaching program. And I would love to walk with you through that. And if you just want to get a taste of, coaching for free, I do offer a first free call. So you can just see if you like coaching, if you like working with me and my husband. So the link for that's in the show notes. All right. Now let's dive into the actual tips here. Like, what can you do? Okay, guys. How to get the support you actually need. 1, be honest about what you actually need. And when I say honest, I mean be vulnerable, right? Because there's something under the anger. There's something under the resentment. There's something under the frustration. And it's likely a more vulnerable emotion. And that's the one that you're trying to mask to protect yourself with this anger or resentment or frustration. And so get very honest about what that is. Instead of saying, you never hang out with me, say, I miss you. Right? You see how that's a lot more vulnerable? It's a lot harder to say. But yet that's the thing that your husband could actually really hear. Because if you say, why don't you ever hang out with me? Your husband is not going to hear, I miss you and I want to be with you. He's going to hear, I'm failing again. There's nothing I can do to please her. And that is going to hurt your marriage, not help it. So before you can communicate your needs to your spouse, you have to know them yourself. Many of us, we walk around feeling unsupported, but we haven't actually defined what would make us feel supported. So I want you to write down 3 specific things that would make you feel more supported, whether it's help with the kids, words of affirmation, or dedicated time together. And I encourage you probably not to bring all 3 of those up at once, maybe. So, but I'll let you decide how you want to go about that. Okay, step 2. If you're taking notes, we're on step 2 here. Stop expecting mind reading and start communicating clearly. We kind of touched on this, but expectation without communication is a setup for disappointment. Unmet expectations are a huge intimacy killer. And so instead of dropping hints or waiting for your spouse to, quote unquote, just know, communicate your needs clearly and kindly. So for example, instead of saying, I feel like I do everything around here, try saying, it would mean a lot to me if you could take care of bedtime so I can have 30 minutes to rest. Or we can go back to our I love statement. I would love, right? We know that that is a way that our husbands can hear us. Well, you do if you've been listening to the podcast for a little while. And then some biblical wisdom to go along that. I encourage you to read Ephesians 4:29, which encourages wives to speak words to build up and not to tear down. And then step 3 is to assume the best, not the worst. Your spouse isn't your enemy, remember? Like, we don't want to look at them as an enemy. We're a team. Remember, we're a team. So however you need to do this, there's different ways you could go about it. I'll tell you what I do, but then I encourage you to find what works best for you. So for me, we say we're Team Gray, right? Because our last name is Gray. We do this with the kids. And I started doing this with our marriage too, because I thought, hey, well, we're the original Team Gray, right? Micaiah and Levi are Team Gray original. But then we brought on extra teammates, which is our kids, right? But we're still the leaders of the team, and my husband is still the head coach, if that makes sense. Like, there's a hierarchy there, but so it's Team Gray. We do what's best for Team Gray. And I try to ingrain that into everyone's mindset, because we're in this culture here in America and in Western culture where it's like we think so individualistically, and I don't believe that's biblical, and I don't believe that's really helpful for the family unit or the marriage. So we think about Team Gray, We ask ourselves what's best for the team. And I just encourage you, like, instead of assuming that he's just neglecting you or assuming that your spouse doesn't care, just think, well, they may not realize how I'm feeling right now. And I ask that you would pray and ask God to help you see your spouse through his eyes before approaching the conversation. Okay, step 4, create a support plan together. Healthy marriages do not run on assumptions, they run on intentionality. So have an open conversation about what support looks like in this season. So for example, if you're implementing new schedules or habits like we talked about in the last episode, invite your spouse into the process rather than expecting them to catch up later. I've done this. I've taken 2 courses, one I'm still in the middle of, that we're all about like systemizing routines, getting organized. One was just for like home mostly, and then the other was for home and business. So I've been working through this, and in the beginning I didn't bring my husband into it, and that was a bad idea. He was not very happy when he came home, and I was just like, okay, I changed everything around. We're doing this, 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 and this. And so I don't encourage you to do that, but like instead sit down, do it together, figure out what your systems look like, figure out what your routines look like, okay? And there's 2 podcasts I recommend for this. There's Simple Rhythms for Busy Moms by Kyan Molina, and there's Systemize Your Life with Chelsea Joe. So I encourage you to write those down too and to start listening to those as well. Okay, and then step 5, invite, don't demand. Support is most powerful when it's freely given, not forced. So instead of guilt tripping your spouse into helping, invite them in. Even if it's like when I'm speaking to the wives right now, my advice to you specifically is to hand things over in a way that you're asking your husband to lead it, not in a way where you're like, it needs to be done this way, this way, this way, this way. Here you go. Because that puts you in a situation where he feels like you're the boss and you're giving him a task to do. Whereas if you say, honey, I really can't do this thing anymore. And, there's a number of reasons you could say that. Like, it's really draining my energy. It's taking away, time or energy from the kids or this other section of things that I'm responsible for. Like, whatever it is, you just say, I can't do this thing anymore. I would really love it if you were able to step up and lead in this area of the home or this area of XYZ, whatever it is. And allow them to feel like they are leading that. It's fully in their responsibility. Like they get to take it over, not like they get to do the work and you're going to micromanage and like hover over them and make sure they do it right. Because that is degrading. Like that is not how your husband wants to be treated by his wife. And no shame here. But just a gentle reminder from me that you have to come into the conversation knowing that your husband needs respect for it to be a safe environment for him. We talked about this in other episodes. Women need love for it to be a safe environment. Men need respect for it to be a safe environment. Okay. And we also talked about in other episodes what respect actually looks like. So if you haven't listened, I encourage you to go back and listen to some of my past episodes. And then a Bible verse to wrap this up here. I encourage you to go read Proverbs 15:1, which talks about a gentle answer turning away wrath and that a harsh one stirs up anger. Paraphrasing there because I want you to go read it. Okay. Now I just want you to kind of dig deep into your brain and ask yourself if you saw healthy communication between your parents. And was there like a pattern of unspoken expectations or silent resentment? How did you see your parents like handle responsibilities? How did they divvy up things? How did they ask each other for help? Did they ask each other for help? Like who did what? And then I want you to kind of just think through, is any of that impacting your marriage today? Like, is there stuff that you and your spouse saw growing up that you just internalized and thought, oh, well, that's just how it is, and then you brought it into your marriage, and instead of like questioning if that's what works for you or actually talking through it, you just started living in autopilot, and maybe here you are and it's just not working, and maybe it's time to reevaluate, right? So sometimes we need to look at the past, look at what we grew up with, look at what has happened before us, so that we can get clarity about where we want to go moving forward. Okay, if this episode hit home for you, if this was spot on what you needed today, I want you to do one simple thing this week. Sit down and have an intentional, gracious conversation with your spouse about what support looks like for both of you. And don't go into it with selfish expectations, but genuinely even go in seeking to understand what your husband needs from you. Get specific, get clear, and most importantly, listen with love. And if you are feeling stuck in unhealthy patterns, if you want help to break them, I encourage you to book that free coaching call below. And then if you do want more information about my coaching program, I love to walk couples through powerful biblical strategies for healing communication, restoring connection, and building a marriage that reflects Christ. So I would love to talk with you about that, or just coach you for free. It's up to you. So, all right, guys, remember, healthy marriages create healthy homes, and healthy homes change generations. I love you. I'm rooting for your marriage transformation, and I am praying for you. Have a blessed day. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you got so much value out of it. And if you loved this episode, could you do me a quick favor and click 5 stars and leave me a review? It would do wonders for spreading the podcast out to other people who need it, and it only takes a few seconds. If you have an additional few seconds, why don't you go ahead and screenshot the episode and share it to your stories so we can spread the message and get more families healed. Thank you, and until next time, I will be praying for you, and I hope you have a blessed day. Bye.